governments all over North America understand that the status quo, the way it's working right now, it's unaffordable. You cannot keep going on this route.
I'm 29 years old. I've spent my entire life in poverty, in a poverty that most people don't think exists in Canada when, let's be real, severe poverty does exist. There are many children who go to bed hungry each night, who have to miss school because they don't have lunch or snacks. And basic income gave me the first opportunity in my 29 years to rise above the poverty.
The day we got that letter and opened it up, like, we just burst into tears. It was just like, it was just this amazing thing that happened. And it's crazy because it's like, it's not even that much money. You know, $1,500 a month is what we were getting, and that just like changed everything. We knew that we could get a place. We knew that like that much is covered. We have a bed for Julia to sleep in, and this little guy is gonna not be born in a shelter or something ridiculous. Like, it was just, it took so much weight off of the day-to-day, and we still had to kind of scrape to pull things together. But like, we were like laughing and smiling again for the first time in months.
I was glad to fill out the applications. I was glad to see if I could push something to make a big difference in Ontario for a bracket that could not only help me as a person, but help a lot of other people in poverty. It could. Basic income could take care of poverty.
The previous government, they had a 10-year roadmap that they'd laid out that made sense, and it was actually looking like it was supposed to work towards a kinder and fairer social assistance plan. That, you know, if you walk into an Ontario Works office, you need assistance, first thing that they're going to do is find out what barriers are in your way. You know, do you have mental health problems? Do you have a chronic injury? And get the barriers out of the way before forcing you to look for work.
3 years ago, the ministry did a complete review of everything they did. Ontario Works, Ontario Disability, helping parents with autistic kids, everything. They looked at income security in Ontario. And they brought in the experts, and they didn't consult because there's been so much consultation. It was gathering all the data going, yes, the current system, all those common sense reforms made 20 years ago by the last supposedly progressive conservative government was a disaster. It didn't fix the system, it irreplaceably broke it. And 20 years of data now shows what poverty costs the province. Why should the provincial government, Ontario government, make a 10-year commitment to create a poverty-free Ontario, which might have a price tag of about $30 or $40 billion over 10 years? Spend $3 or $4 billion every year for 10 years, 30 or 40, because poverty costs Ontario 30 or 40 or 50 billion every year.
There's just so many excuses that people make about poor people to poor people. And it's just this ridiculous cycle of like, you know, why don't you do this? Well, because this. Yeah, well, you should have done this. Yeah, but then this. And it literally just comes around, and it's this cyclical argument where it's like, the problem here isn't necessarily me, it's you being ignorant to me and my situation and not understanding, like, there's this stigma of, like, you know, going to get scratchy lotteries and cigarettes and get wasted on our baby bonus money. Like, you know, it works well in the minds of people because people really don't like to hear that taxpayer money is helping poor people, because it's immediately like, I'm propping you up with my tax dollars. And like with a program like this, $150 million over 3 years. Population of Ontario is 14. I did the numbers. 14 million, just so almost 14.2 million. So what is it, like 10?
It was like 10 something.
$10.57, and then divide that by 3 over those 3 years. So it's such a good psychological argument that they always have against when there's a problem. Excuse you, buddy. When there's a problem with giving poor people money, $150 million of your tax dollars, and you put that "your" in there, and then it's people get entitled to that money, and they're like, well, that's my $150 million. You're not even going to see $1 million in your lifetime, bud, let alone $150 million. That's a coffee a day for a week to help 4,000 people just get lifted out of poverty for 3 years.
And I think one of the best ways of looking at a basic income is a prosperity dividend. In Alaska's got oil, and all the citizens get a prosperity dividend off of that. And it's to cover the basics. Like, should not everyone be able to have food so they don't starve, be able to have housing so they don't get sick or stressed out, or and this is where I think the frustrating thing about all the people that voted for the Conservatives going, they want to get rid of wasted government spending and they want value for taxpayer dollar. Great. Let's create a poverty-free Ontario. Because that's where's the money being wasted? Healthcare. As Canadians, Ontarians, we love our universal healthcare. Well, when people don't have housing or don't have enough for food, they get sick, and we're spending tens of billions of dollars treating the effects of poverty instead of preventing it.
I think a universal basic income would help business, all kinds of business, help schools, help families, help the world in general. It's just the economy, the economics of it is just people working, living at a decent wage and income, and then people that are able to keep supporting their taxes through that. I mean, we're all paying taxes no matter what.
The economic justice is the waste in taxpayer dollars, if that's what you care about, but the waste in opportunity and humanity. That, you know, when you look at people that struggled, you know their story. Everyone has a story, and if they would bring you through the skeleton closet in the dark corners of it, it would break your heart.
I still had hope because it seemed like the government was heading in a great direction for all of Ontario, and then the Conservative government, I can't call them progressive Conservative, just straight up Conservative government came in, and they've just been slashing left, right, and center without a care for anyone beneath their social or economic circle. Never mind the thousands on basic income.
I mean, they had said on the campaign that they weren't going to touch it. And then that was one of the first things that they did. Aside from changing their party slogan from Doug Ford to For the People to Ontario Open for Business, I don't think that's a coincidence, you know.
If you want the results of the experiment, you got to run the experiment to its entirety. And it's sad that they're cutting it 1.5 to 2 years too early, and that even extending it generously to the end of March, the end of the fiscal year, they're not interested in even getting the first round of surveys. I got my 12th payment, my first year of payments last month in September, or October is my 13th payment now. And I'm going, well, where's my survey? Oh, wait, they're winding it down. They're not interested. And so here's the hypocrisy where they're so proud about promises made and promises kept. For them, this is the deal breaker. They made a promise. Nope, we're not going to touch it. No, we're not going to touch it. No, they did. And so I have no faith in this current government. And the looming fear is what's going to happen to the regular social assistance system. Because the announcement they made on July 31st, canceling the basic income wasn't the announcement. That was the footnote.
The one thing that bothers me about this, they didn't even have the guts or the courage to send a letter to the basic income participants. Instead, just let us find out through Facebook. The news like that just shows how little they actually care for the people.
Basically, if you were not plugged into media, you wouldn't even know that the program had been canceled, because they didn't mail, they didn't phone, they didn't do anything with the participants until September.
They said they were going to cut it. They didn't say when. So
now we're just sitting there like biting our nails.
Yeah, we spent, I don't even know how long. Was it like a month before we even found out when our last check would be? So like it very well could have been we had one left. And then what? Like, we didn't know. So it was just anxiety times like a million. And like I was just regularly freaking out and trying to be like, okay, like we can do this, and then leaving the house and then like calling my mom and crying and be like, Mom, like we can't fucking do this. I don't know what we're gonna do. We like not knowing. How could you keep that many people in the dark? This is our fucking lives. Like, not knowing if we're going to be homeless in a month? Are you kidding me?
All said and done, it was a very emotional time. People breaking down and crying. And, you know, I mean, I am a peer support worker, and I have a heart too, and I have feelings. And I don't feel they're doing this under some kind of... I can't think that people here in Ontario and in Canada would fear to hurt, or there must be some way they're trying to say to us. There's like do it ourselves. Do it ourselves. We've been doing it ourselves for so long. We just need a little hand, you know. We really do. It makes so much sense to me to put money into somebody and see if they'll honor that money and get ahead in their life. I mean, hygiene products and clothing and volunteer work. I'm volunteering. I've always volunteered like crazy, but I'm volunteering like crazy even more now. And work and school, and I mean, I've been going to school for a while, and I was so hoping that I was going to be able to study mental health and religion, the philosophy of mental health. And I can't do that now. I went down to zero twice this time off of ODSP, and it almost took my right arm. They said I could lose it, my right arm. I went down to zero before that happened. In 88, I was down to a $45 check. $45 check. I was 2 weeks away from the union, and I fell 50 feet. These are the things that can happen when you work, and your work ain't paid the right way, and the person wants to prove to himself that he can get ahead. It's just as simple and as easy as the other guy. Because that's all I thought I could do.
I saw the change in the 90s of re-engineering the corporation and focusing on doing more for less. The Walmart philosophy. Let's do more for less. The problem with doing more for less is it unemploys people. And this is where we've been going as a civilization for the last 25 years. I remember coming out of school in '92, the recession, and in the 90s we got the jobless recovery. So in Nortel, that plant, we went from 400 600. They hired 200 people that year, and I was there. Within 5 years, we hired another 1,000 people. We went from 400 to 1,700 employees in 7 years. $40 million of sales to $800 million of sales. It went. Canada's premier high-tech company of the 90s. Where are they now? Gone. Bankrupt. Google bought all the patents.
I honestly don't know the percentage, but it's somewhere between 60 and 70% of the participants in the pilot actually had a job. I mean, they were working poor, and yeah, they'll go on, but now they're going to be back into the payday loan lenders. And how do you make ends meet when you don't know, when your job is precarious, you're paid minimum wage. Oh, and they stop the forward progress of minimum wage too, which is another additional factor to add stress to people. So I mean, this government is just doing things really, really wrong, and taking steps backwards to let's go back to Mike Harris stage. You know, they just don't seem to care.
I didn't grow up in poverty. I grew up as the youngest child of a single mother. I did well in school. I got a post-secondary education. I got a mid-class career. Something happened, and I fell back. And a lot of people, particularly now, 10 or 20 years later, are probably a lot closer to that than can happen to anyone. Most people are one incident, whatever that incident is, away from a pretty scary journey that they're not going,
If you have financial insecurity, you don't have the luxury of thinking outside of like the next bills, the next rent payment, the next grocery trip. Like you are just in the moment, but not in like a good Buddhist way. You are in the moment because you're in survival mode. You're constantly just making quick decisions to try and just make it to the next day. And so when people want to rag on people who are poor, if you have a low economic status and you're financially insecure, it's like, oh, you're making dumb decisions, and it's your fault you're in this position. It's like, well, maybe, but you're not going to make smart decisions. It's not like we can take that money and go invest it somewhere or like buy property. Like, it has to immediately go to survival, and we made it another day, and you pass out, and then you wake up the next day and figure out how you're going to do it again.
For me, I've had skills. I had a 10-year career at Nortel before my disability came in. And so I have skills that I can use if I'm not chasing my tail with my disability. And housing stability allows, once you stabilize, you're going, okay, I don't have to worry about where I'm sleeping tonight. I know the roof's over my head tonight, next week, next month, next year. Okay, that's one thing off the table. What about food? If that's not too much, you can get the food, you can eat reasonably, 2-3 meals a day. You're not worried about having to go, oh, I have to go to the Good Shepherd. Oh wait, it's 4:30, I better run because I only have 15 minutes. Being poor and not having enough resources to pay for shelter and food makes being poor a full-time job.
Because how can you plan for a future adequately when you don't even know what the hell's happening with your income?
Quite a few of the people that I know on basic income, now that they know it's not going to run 3 years, rather than behaving like something that would be useful in the evaluation in terms of spending their money in the local community and getting themselves moving forward, they've been hoarding that cash. They've been stashing it. And with OW, with both of them, OW and ODSP, there is an upper limit on what you can come in with. And if people on basic income who have been putting this money away for a rainy day or to you know, raid when they need it, as it were. I'm a little bit concerned that they're going to have too much money and have to dump it somewhere, you know, however they do. So that's a bit of a concern. There's something that went through my mind.
Being able to lift someone out of that fog of being poor for even just as long as we had the program, it was like life-changing to be able to think that we have a couple years of security, like let's be the most efficient that we can and try and make sure, because it's got an end date, you know, it's not like it was forever, but it was far off enough that we had time to make some concrete plans about our future to make sure that our family is secure and we have a good enough shot to make sure our kids are going to be successful and we're not going to starve to death. And that's gone. I don't know. We'll figure something out. We always seemed to somehow.
It's been our mantra every day.
Yeah, we will figure something out.
We still have a vote. Basically, far too many people don't exercise that right, but it's still up to us what the government does when push comes to shove. And I know Basic Income Canada and Ontario Basic Income Network are working very hard to get people on board with basic income, to understand what it is, and to understand that, yeah, we can pay for it. We've got an enormous economy that most of the benefits go to the top, and that's getting worse. It's not getting better, and it's up to us as electorate to change that if we want to change it.
If I was to say anything about the system, I'd like to say there's got to be a system where people like myself can work their way off it. A system that can be fair and treated fair, as I will treat that system fair. That system helped me to volunteer, to work, to go to school, to be able to have a family. Now, honestly, this is 2018. There's got to be a better system. There's got to be.